Indians barely eat chocolate, under 200 grams a year per person. A British person eats about 7 kgs, roughly 35 times more. And yet, the single most dominant position Cadbury holds in any other country on earth is right here. About 2/3 of India's chocolate market. One company in a country that doesn't really eat the product. So, how do you sell that much of something almost nobody eats? You stop selling chocolate and you start selling days. That is the whole trick, and it explains 3 things. Why a chocolate company spent a decade advertising a festival about a piece of a string. Why in 2022 the same company sold a Rakhi with a Bluetooth chip inside it. And why the number every Indian newspaper prints every August, 17,000 crore rupees, does not survive a calculator. Not roughly, not approximately, it collapses. It starts on a shelf in a gifting store in Karol Bagh. On that shelf there is a Rakhi, red thread, a small charm, a few golden beads, 10 rupees. Next to it, a Cadbury Celebrations box, about 200 rupees, 20 times the thread, for a product with no traditional connection to the festival whatsoever. And before any of this gets pulled apart, one thing has to be said plainly. The thread is real. Raksha Bandhan means literally a bond of protection. A sister ties a thread on her brother's wrist. He owes her something for it. That is the entire ritual. It costs 10 rupees and it is centuries old. Nobody sold anybody that feeling. It was already there. And that is exactly what makes it valuable. Because you cannot rent an emotion that does not exist. To understand how the box got onto that shelf, you have to understand Cadbury's problem in India. It's not opportunity, it's problem. Because Cadbury India has been winning for decades. By Euromonitor's count, it holds roughly 64% of the chocolate market. That sounds like a triumph, but it's a trap, because market share is a share of something, and that something in India is tiny. Chocolate is not a habit here. It is not a daily snack. It is not an after dinner ritual. It is not a thing that lives in the fridge. It's an occasion, faintly special purchase. In a country where the sweet at the center of every celebration has always been a mithai. So Cadbury India stood at the top of the mountain, looked around and realized the mountain was very small. There was barely any share left to take, and it could not make Indians eat chocolate the way British eat chocolate. That is a hundreds-year habit. You do not fix that with a campaign, which leaves exactly one lever. If you cannot grow how much people consume, you grow how often they are obliged to. In the late 1990s, Cadbury India launched a product called Celebrations, and critically, it was not a snack. Celebrations was not built to be eaten. It was built to be given. It was aimed squarely at the mithai box, the modern, cleaner, longer lasting thing you hand somebody at a festival. And the festival it was built for was Diwali. That part almost always got wrong. Celebrations is a Diwali product. Diwali is the biggest gifting occasion in India, and it is still Celebrations' biggest window of the year. But Diwali is one day, and a company that has run out of share in a category with no habit cannot live on a day in a year. So Cadbury went looking for more days. Weddings, Eid, Bhai Dooj, New Year's, and from around 2018, seriously, systematically, expensively, Raksha Bandhan. Now, watch what it actually advertised, because it was almost never the chocolate. In 2018, with Ogilvy, a boy spent his cricket bat savings on a gift for his sister. Is Rakhi kuch acha ho jaye, kuch meetha ho jaye. The product is barely in the film. The feeling is the entire film. In 2021, Cadbury funded low-cost, sensor-enabled prosthetic arms so that children with limb differences could actually feel a Rakhi being tied on their wrist. In 2023, it bought an ad slot against men listening to romantic songs online and nudged them. You're planning something for your girlfriend. Remember your sister. Year after year, film after film. For the better part of a decade, one chocolate company paid heavily to make Raksha Bandhan feel a lot bigger. Because Cadbury does not sell a chocolate in India. It sells days. The chocolate never changes. The day is the real product. And then in 2022, it did something nobody saw coming. Cadbury sold a Rakhi. Not a box next to a Rakhi, the Rakhi itself. They called it the Connected Rakhi. And inside, there was a thread with a proximity sensor, a Bluetooth chip, and a small speaker. The sister records the message. The brother wears the thread. And anytime he moves away from her, her voice plays back to him off his own wrist. 825 rupees on Amazon, bundled with a chocolate-coated dry fruits. 325 rupees on its own on Flipkart. Sit with that for a second. A Rakhi in Delhi's wholesale market goes for 6 rupees to 9 rupees a piece in bulk. Reporters standing in Sadr Bazaar have found them starting at 40 paisa. A chocolate company sold one for 825 rupees. And look what has happened structurally. For 20 years, Cadbury sold the object standing next to the ritual. Then it manufactured the ritual object itself, put a microchip in it, and charged roughly 80 times the going rate. That is not a gifting company anymore. That is a company that has worked out the ritual is the real estate and has stopped renting and started building. If a brand quietly bolting itself onto a feeling you already have sounds familiar, it should. It is the exact move I broke down in the video on what brands do on Tricolor every August. Same playbook, just different emotions. Cadbury did not invent this playbook. It just ran it very well in a country with a very large number of festivals. The definitive version was executed almost 80 years ago by a diamond mining company with a problem that should now sound extremely familiar. De Beers in 1940s controlled the supply of diamonds. What it did not control was the demand. Diamonds were a small, rich people product. Nobody needed them. And a diamond, unlike a chocolate, is not consumed. You cannot get somebody to come back and buy another one the next month. So, in 1947, De Beers agency produced 4 words, a diamond forever. And over the decades that followed, De Beers did not sell diamonds. It sold a day. It sold the proposal. It bolted a stone onto a moment that already had an enormous emotion loaded into it. And then they waited. It even set the price. The idea that an engagement ring should cost 2 to 3 months of salary was not a tradition. It was not economics. It was an advertising suggestion. De Beers has never publicly confirmed the exact prescription, but the number entered the culture anyways. And hundreds of millions of people have ever since budgeted the most important question of their life against a line of ad copy. An entire global tradition worth tens of billions of dollars, invented just by a campaign. And once you have done that, once the occasion itself is the product, something else follows. Something the brands don't do and don't have to do. Other people start inflating the occasion for them. Which brings us finally to the number. Every August, Indian newspapers print the same figure. Raksha Bandhan is a 17,000 crore rupee market. That figure comes from one place, a traders body called CAIT, the Confederation of All India Traders. And in its own press release, CAIT is very specific about what the number covers. 17,000 crore rupees, it says, and I'm quoting, in Rakhi alone, Rakhis, the threads, there is a separate 4,000 crores for sweets, gift packs, clothing and everything else. Now, take a calculator to that. A Rakhi in India's biggest wholesale market sells for 6 to 9 rupees in bulk. On street, about 10 to 40 rupees. Let's call it 30 rupees and be generous. 17,000 crore rupees divided by 30 rupees is 567 crore Rakhis. India has almost 1.4 billion people. So, for that number to be real, India would have to sell 4 Rakhis for every single person in the country. Every man, every woman, every newborn, 4 each. And if you're thinking, fine, an average Rakhi is dearer than that, then push it. Say every Rakhi sold in India goes for 100 rupees. That is a premium retail Rakhi, not a street one. You still need 170 crore Rakhis. That is more than one for every Indian alive. The number does not survive a calculator. Not at the low end, not at the high end. It does not work anywhere in between. And here is the same pattern, one more time from 5 years earlier. In 2020, CAIT announced that Chinese imports made up 4,000 crore rupees of 6,000 crore rupees Raksha Bandhan market. 2/3 just Chinese? The beads, the charms, the decorative parts of a Rakhi comes in under a custom category called imitation jewelry. In 2023, India's total import of that particular entire category from every country on earth came to 260 crore rupees. CAIT had claimed 4,000 crore rupees of Chinese Rakhi in a single festival. That is roughly 15 times India's entire annual import bill for that particular category from the whole world. Now, some Rakhi components will fall under other custom codes. That is fair and it is true, but it does not close the gap of that size. Nothing closes the gap of that size. So, who is publishing these? CAIT is a trade body. It is also India's most active lobby against e-commerce. And in its own press release, the number is announced by its Secretary General Praveen Khandelwal, who is described by CAT itself as a sitting member of parliament for Chandni Chowk. None of that is hidden. None of it is unusual. And none of it is an accusation. But it does mean the number has an author, and the author is better off when the number is big. Now put it next to somebody who counts differently. The Retailers Association of India surveys its actual member stores, real shops. For the 2025 festive season, it measured about 11% growth. For broadly the same season, CAIT announced 25%. Both are published, both are real organizations. They're not measuring the same thing though. Only one of them is walking into the shops. So if the thread did not grow, the number is fiction. What actually happened to Raksha Bandhan then? Delivery happened. At Raksha Bandhan last year, at 21 minutes past 10 in the morning, Swiggy Instamart was selling 1200 Rakhis a minute. Zepto peaked at 820. Instamart moved 3.5 times as many Rakhi as the last year. That is what a modern festival economy actually looks like. It is not a shopkeeper in Karol Bagh. It is a dark store 6 minutes away and a brother who forgot until 10 in the morning. And in September 2025, the government cut GST across most of these gifting categories, which did more for a festival spending in one notification than a decade of advertising did. So the occasion was manufactured by the brands. The volume was delivered by warehouse and a tax cut. And there is one last move, one that only works because the product is the day. Cocoa has been through historic price volatility. For a chocolate company, that is an emergency, and there are only two ways out of it. You either charge more or you give less. Cadbury's chief executive, Dirk Van der Put, has been unusually blunt about which they have picked. Speaking on a BBC podcast, he said people want their daily Cadbury, but they will not pay more for the same quantity. So the company holds the prices and shrinks the bar. In Britain, Dairy Milk Little Bars multi-pack went from 6 to 4. Freddos went from 5 to 4. Now think about what that actually means for a gift. If you're selling a snack, the grams matter. The customer eats it, the customer notices it. But if you're selling a day, if the product is the gesture, then nobody weighs it. Nobody in the history of Raksha Bandhan has ever taken a box off of the shelf and checked the grams. The box only has to look like a gift, which is the quiet final advantage of selling days instead of chocolate. When the occasion is what's being bought, the thing inside it can keep getting smaller and the transaction still works perfectly. So here is what to take away from all of this. And it is not that brands use festivals to sell things. Everybody knows that. When a business cannot grow how much you consume, it grows how often you are obliged to. It stops advertising the product and it starts manufacturing the occasion. And once the occasion is the product, then the size of the occasion becomes the marketing asset too, which is precisely why a number that nobody can verify gets printed in every newspaper every single August. Now point that lens at anything. Greeting cards, flowers, jewelry, restaurants that exist for one Sunday in May, the insurance ad that asks gently whether you have really taken care of your own family. Every one of them lives in a category where you cannot be made to consume more. So a day was built for it instead. And once you see the day being built, you can actually see the entire apparatus standing behind it. The film, the hashtag, the prosthetic arm, the number in the newspaper that makes the day look bigger than it actually is. The thread costs 10 rupees. That part is real. That part is centuries old. Everything else standing next to it on the shelf is about 25 years old. And every bit of it was put there on purpose. Cadbury does not sell chocolates in India. It sells days. And this month it is selling this one. Raksha Bandhan falls on the 28th of August this year. Somewhere in Lucknow or Chennai or Bangalore, a sister will tie a 10 rupee thread onto her brother's wrist and he will reach under the sofa for a box that arrived in 6 minutes the night before. Both of those are now Raksha Bandhan. Only one of them has been Raksha Bandhan for centuries. If pulling apart the business machinery behind the things Indians take for granted is the sort of thing you want to see more of, subscribe. There is a great deal of more coming.